What a beautiful day here at Wishwell Farms. Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going to be stringing up grape tomatoes using the Florida weave system. Before we do that, let's take a quick peek in here in greenhouse number 1. See what we got. They're growing fast. We're ready to put clip number 2 on this week. We got flower clusters opened up all over, and that means it's time for pollinating. And to do the pollinating job, we use bumblebees. Oh, one just crawled back inside his hive. Let's take a quick peek in here and see what we got. So there's our pollinating bumblebees. They're domesticated bumblebees. Comes from a company in Michigan called Copert Biological. I plan to do a video on the bumblebees and pollinating here in the very near future, so be on the lookout for that. A couple more small tasks that need finished up before I head down and do the stringing on the grape tomatoes down there in our grape house. I need to water the transplants for this greenhouse that are going to be transplanted later this week. And I have to also transplant some of the planting number 3 into the 4-inch cubes. So we got the next batch here, planting number 3, ready to go. There's planting number 2 that we're getting ready to water here. Now that the days are getting longer and we're getting more sunlight as we enter spring, I've noticed that the plants have to be watered every day. No more getting away with watering every other day. As soon as I finish getting these watered, we're going to do a little transplanting in here into the 4-inch cubes, and then we'll head down and get the grape tomatoes strung up. And I'll show you guys how I use the Florida weave system to trellis the grape tomatoes onto the T-post. The same method we use out in the open field for our determinate field tomatoes. I know I've already showed a detailed video on this process, so I'm not going to elaborate on this much today. This is just something I got to crank out real quick here before we head down to the grape tomato greenhouse to get these things strung up. All right, I need about a half hour to finish this job up, and then we'll be heading down to the grape house. So today is March 13th, and on the planting schedule for March 15th is the first of the field crops, bell peppers and hot peppers. So in the next couple days, my wife and I will be out here seeding 52 flats of bell peppers and hot peppers in 72 count trays. So that'll be another video coming up here real soon. A lot of these tomatoes will be cleaned out here by the end of the week and transplanted, so we'll have lots of space in here to start seeding our field crops. All right, now that we got those little jobs out of the way, we're heading down to the grape house. Oh, one more thing. Let me show you what I worked on yesterday. I just about have the long house ready to go. So all the buckets have been cleaned out with debris that was in there from pulling plants out last year. And you can see they're almost full of perlite already. So I just have to top them off with fresh perlite and rake up these center 2 aisles. I use the leaf blower to blow all the junk out of the rows because it's really fine and powdery stuff. You almost have to sweep it. So I decided to use an air blower, and you can see all the junk is in these 2 center aisles. The outside rows are nice and clean. So later today I'll be topping off these buckets with perlite, and I already flushed the drippers once, just gotta check them one more final time, and then we'll be moving plants in here in a couple days to get this long house, 148 feet long, transplanted with 1,000 tomatoes. Well, it holds 1,000 tomatoes, but we're only planting 3 rows this week, and these 2 rows are the ones I'll be putting into 4-inch cubes that are just little guys. So we stage this in 2 plantings, and it works out really well for us. All right, now we are going to go string up some grape tomatoes. On the way down here, I have a question for you guys. I need your input. So, would you prefer 1 video per week, maybe 2, of 20 to 30 minutes in length, or would you prefer 2 to 3 videos per week in the 10 to 15 minute range? I can do either. I've kind of experimented with both. Let me know down in the comments what you guys would prefer. I'm guessing it's gonna be the shorter 8, 10, 12, maybe up to 15 minute in length videos. But it's very, very easy for me to make them 20 to 30 minutes if that's what you would prefer. But in this day and age with people's short attention spans and wanting to get right to the point of what the video is about, I'm guessing that 8 to 15 minute range is gonna be the sweet spot. So let me know down in the comments what you guys think, and I will do my best to accommodate that. All right, let's see what we got going on in here. Yeah, they need strung up pretty bad. I don't see any falling over, but they are leaning and they're over a foot above the bamboo stakes. Yeah, see, I can barely keep them up. I did fix about 4 or 5 yesterday that had completely fallen over in the aisle, so it definitely needs done. And I feel like they're rooted in decent. I feel like they've shot the roots down into the cocoa core slabs at least an inch. So they're anchored in good enough to do some stringing today. All right, I got my handy box of twine. This is tomato twine. There's a big spool inside this box, and it comes out this little slit on top. And you can either put it through your belt if you happen to be wearing a belt. In the past, if I didn't use one of these straps from our berry picking lugs, I'm just using one of these straps right here that we use for picking. I mean, they're for picking berries, but we don't grow berries, so we use them for our grape tomatoes and for working in our hydroponic greenhouses with clips and J-hooks and, you know, any other small pieces of plastic we need to put in here to carry around. They work great for picking grape tomatoes. And these straps work great for these boxes, but you can't just use a piece of string and put it through your, you gotta be freaking kidding me. My gosh, I'm always getting interrupted. You know, if you don't have a strap or a belt, you can also just use a piece of string and loop it through a couple belt loops and then through this little slot on the box, and it works just fine. So this method we're going to be doing today is called the Florida weave system. I've used it for 25 years on my farm. I don't even remember how I learned it. I probably saw it in some magazine or maybe someone showed me. But today I'm going to show you how to do it, and you can implement this same method in your garden. It doesn't have to be for just commercial growers. So the best way for you to implement the Florida weave system in your garden is to start with a steel T-post or a firm wooden stake at the end of your row. Let's assume you have 1 row of tomatoes. Get the steel T-post or the wooden stake pounded in good at the end of your row. We space our field tomatoes 2.5 feet apart. So every 5 feet, so every 2 plants, we put a wooden stake pounded into the ground. And then we take our string and we weave it down one side of the row and come back on the other side. And I'll show you exactly how that is done here in a second. So the reason we use steel T-post in here is because we leave them in the greenhouse permanently. We don't ever remove these. So they're anchored in well, and they're spaced further than 5 feet. It looks like, you know, I got a 6.5 foot wingspan probably. We're about 7.5, 8 feet apart on these T-posts. And if you have steel T-post throughout your entire garden, you probably could go beyond that 5 feet. If we go further than that in our field, we run the risk of the plants falling over when we have a stiff wind, when the fruit load is really heavy on the plant. Also from irrigating, the ground gets soft from irrigating. So after a day of irrigation, a stiff wind might come through when the plants are full of green fruit, and they will start falling over. And once a couple fall over, it's almost like a domino effect. The whole row will start going, and we'll have to go out and pull the row back up and put a steel T-post in there to hold it up the rest of the season. So 5 feet seems to be a good spacing for us using the wooden stakes. Okay, now I'm ready to show you exactly how we do this in here in the greenhouse, and then you can take this method out into your garden and do the exact same thing. All right, so this is our very first stringing in this greenhouse. We'll probably want to start about 1.5 to 2 foot high on the plant to capture this heavy top that's trying to flop over. When we're out in the field, our first string is probably going to be done when they're only a foot tall, and the plants are a lot stockier and bushier, just a totally different style of plant out in the field. But in your garden, you know, if they may look like this or they may be shorter and bushier, either way, you want to be at least halfway up the plant with your first string, if not 2/3 up the plant. You don't want to be too high, because then you miss your plant and the plant's just still going to flop over. So you need to be, you know, about 2/3 up the plant to capture it. And if you're too low, it doesn't really do any good. It's still going to fall back over. So we're going to start right here. I'm going to wrap it around twice, just tie a double knot, and this string will remain here the entire season. I'm right-handed, so I'm going to be going counterclockwise. And I'll try to explain why, but you might be able to figure it out just by watching. So I'm going to keep this string very tight. And I'm going to go all the way to the next post. So I'm going to pull it to the first post here. With my right hand, I'm keeping this tight. I mean, this thing is like a guitar string. I'm going to reach around with my left hand and grab a hold of it to keep that taut. I'm going to take this loose slack with my right hand up and over the post. And now I am wrapped around the T-post. And then I'm going to continue on to the next one. All right, so here's a close-up. I brought it here with my right hand, grab it with my left to keep it taut. And then I'm going to take the slack in my right hand up and over the post. And now I'm wrapped. And I never let that string get slack in it. You can see once you get the hang of this, you can fly down the road pretty fast. So if you look closely, the tops of the tomato plants are in between the string. And they can't fall over now. Now eventually the top is going to grow and they're going to start getting top heavy and want to flop over again. And that's when you put the next stringing on about 8 to 10 inches above. And just replicate the process until they're finished growing. At the end of the season, we'll have little extensions on here, PVC extensions, and they'll probably grow 7 feet tall in here with string holding them up about every 10 inches. All right, I'm going to demonstrate this again. I'm going to wrap it around, tie it in a double knot. So as you can see, the height of the string is completely dependent on the height of your tomatoes. If they were up here this tall, I would take the string up here probably. See how I'm capturing about at least 2/3 of the plant, if not a little bit more. Wrap it around, up and over the stake. Here I am at the next T-post with my right hand, grabbing it with my left hand to give me some slack here, and up and over the T-post with the slack. And that's how I get my loop around the T-post. It was hard to do this with one hand. I lost all my tightness down here. It's easy to fix, but you don't want to have to do that on every row if you can avoid it. You want that nice and tight. So you may be asking, what do you do when you get to the end of the row? So I'm down here at the back of the greenhouse at the end with my string, the final post here, and all you have to do is wrap around it and keep right on going. So let me go past here and I'll show you. See how it brought the tomato plant right in between the strings there? That's what you want. You want a nice tight spacing between those strings, 1.5 to 2 inches. don't let the plant dictate where your string goes, because that means you probably let the string get loose. You want to keep that string very tight. Now, a little later in the season, when the plants are getting really wide and bushy and full of fruit, then you will have to go a little wider. You won't be able to keep those strings side by side like they are now on this first stringing. But when they're young like this, you want to keep that string really close together on both sides, and that way you can make that plant grow where you want it. Don't let the plant dictate where your string goes. All right, one final tip. When you're coming back on the opposite side with your second stringing, make sure you don't wrap it above where your other string is. It needs to be wrapped in the exact same spot so your strings are horizontal, level with each other. If I were to wrap it up here, which is easy to do when you're getting sloppy and trying to go fast, especially out in the field, I'll see a lot of my employees wrapping like right here. And now you can see this string is not across from each other. It's different heights. And the plant will tend to fall and flop out the way of the lower string. So we want to wrap it directly across from it, as close as we can. All right, on my final row, it's amazing how quickly you can string up a lot of tomatoes. I apologize for not being able to show you better close-ups of the way I'm doing this. I should have had my wife or one of my kids out here holding the camera for me. So maybe I'll do this again a little later on when the tomatoes are much taller, to kind of show the difference of the way it looks. Kind of a different technique that we use when the plants are bushier and taller. But I'm telling you, this is the way to do it. So much better than using some kind of tomato cage or setting up some kind of trellis system above. It doesn't get any cheaper and simpler than this method. And if you're wondering how I finish the row, I just bring it to the same T-post I started with. I'm gonna grab it with my left hand, so I have some slack here. I'm just gonna rub it on the post a couple times and then tie a double knot. Pretty simple. Of course, you could use a knife or scissors if you got it on you, but a steel T-post does just fine at cutting that tomato twine. So if you happen to be new to my channel or only tuning in to see the Florida weave system in this video, you may be wondering why I don't have these 2 rows planted. Normally we stage our grape tomato plantings into 2 plantings so we don't have too much harvest all at once, and it's nice to have a fresh batch come on a little later in the season. But I've decided to try a little experiment this year. We're only going to have 1 planting this year of 4.5 rows, and these 2 rows that are not planted yet, we're going to be planting our determinate field tomatoes in here, kind of as a trial, as an experiment to see how they do. I want to compare them to how the hydroponic tomatoes do in the perlite and the Dutch Beto buckets in the other greenhouses, and to be able to compare them to our field tomatoes that are grown outside, exposed to the cold night temperatures. That's what really sets them back. So having them in here in this warm environment, warmer night temperatures, extra heat and sunlight, they should really perform well, and I'm just curious to see how they will do in the coconut course slabs. So I will definitely keep you guys updated on that as the season progresses. If you have any questions about the Florida weave system, please drop them down in the comments below. And this is where we're going to end today's video, guys. Short and sweet. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and we'll see you again real soon down on the farm.